Hello, good morning to all of you who are present in our class. So today, chapter 3 of economic survey, this chapter basically deal prices and inflations. So this chapter is very crucial from GS paper 3 point of view, even those who are opting economics as a optional and for those who are appearing for Indian economic services. So today let's go to discuss about prices and inflation under control. So what exactly inflations talk about in economic survey? The first point here mentioned as global inflation managements become more hurdle due to the pandemic and subsequent geopolitical tensions. These two measures hurdles were mentioned in in economics survey, documents of economic survey, which is the pandemic and subsequent geopolitical tension. As a result, financial year 22 and 23 witnessed price pressures in core consumer goods and services. We have seen price hike in 2022 and 23 in basically core consumer goods and services. But one thing, it is known to all that low and stable inflation is the key requisite to sustaining economic development. With this view or with this uh, commitment of the RBI to the goal of managing price stability and the policy actions of the central government, India successfully managed to keep retail inflations at 5.4%. At 5.4%. At 5.4% in financial year 24. So, with the help of, it is mentioned here, with the help of monetary policy as well as central government policy actions, it become possible to keep inflations within 5.4% in 2024 financial year. After the pandemic, global economic experienced another set of supply chain disruption, which was basically started with the beginning with Russia-Ukraine war in the first half of the 2023. So first part of the financial year 2023, due to the Russia-Ukraine war, price again hiked globally. But it is seen or it is mentioned in our economic survey that in later half of the financial year 2023 as well as in 24 there was decline in global inflation because of some reasons. First thing, low energy prices, low core inflations and monetary tightening, that is monetary policies were tightened. So due to all these reasons, later part of 2023 and 2024, it is witnessed that inflations become under control. Now, come to this point, say inflations, Indian retail inflations is lower than the emerging market and developed economics and world average. As per the IMF, International Monetary Fund data, Indian inflation rate was lower than the global average and that of emerging market and developed economics in financial year 2022 and 23. So in economic survey, it is mentioned about the effect of IMF. As per IMF, the Indian inflation rate was lower than the global average, and that of emerging market and developed economics in financial year 2022 and 23. There is a clear negative relationship. Between the cross country inflation and per capita GDP. So this is a clear. We get a clear negative relationship is shown here. Here you can see this one. The per capita income, average inflations, and per capita GDP per capita. There is a negative relation which is portrayed by this figure. Next, one thing, India is performing, it is also mentioned here, India is performing better than various developed and emerging economy in relation to inflation target. So what here mentions that India is performing better in compare with developed economics and emerging market in relation to the inflation targeting figure. So since 2022, all the countries in the world have been facing challenges in controlling inflations. In 2023, CPI based on retail inflations was higher because of food inflations, but core inflations moderate, or core inflation remained moderate. So in 2023, which is very important fact revealed by this economic survey, which is CPI based on retail inflation was higher because of the food inflations, while core inflation remained moderate. Reason behind higher food inflations, there are some regions were mentioned here. What are these? The Russian-Ukraine war, excessive heat in summer, uneven rainfall, etc. were mentioned. In 2022, monetary policy broadly focused on absorbing excess liquidity in the system by increasing policy rate by 250 basis points. So, in order to counter inflations, monetary policy raised policy rate 250 basis point in 2020. Purpose is simple, in order to counter this inflation, and behind the hiking this policy rate was to absorbing excess liquidity from the market. That this is how purchasing capacity of masses can be arrested. Simple thing. So that is why 250, this policy rate was increased in 2023 by 250 basis point. You can say it increases from 4%. It increases from 4% in financial year 22 to 6.5% in financial year 23. So RBI took this strong decision in respect of policy rate. Simple purpose in counter to hyperinflations. So we can see here one figure is given here regarding the policy rate and the inflations. We can see here headline inflation, core inflation, food inflations 11.5. Now here core inflation, this one consumer price index released by consumer, retail inflations was lowest, pandemic, decline trend in headline and core inflations. When there is the lower the policy rate, higher the inflation rate is shown. So this is the negative relationship between policy rate and inflation. When policy rate is rising, inflation rate will decline. This one given by a figure in this survey. Here headline inflation, core inflation, food inflation is given also. Here headline inflation, core inflation, food inflation, retail headline inflation was lowest in financial world since 2024 and decline trend in headline and core inflations. Simple thing, in 2022, monetary raises the policy rate by 250 basis point, which was increased from 4% in 2022, 4% in May 2022 to 6.5% in February 23. Now, what is the detailed trend in core and food inflation? Detailed trends in core and food inflation. Core inflation, this one core inflation. So core inflation, what is core inflation? Core inflation is measured excluding food and energy items. The item which are more volatile, these were excluded. These were excluded when this core inflation is estimated. So while core inflation estimated, volatile items were excluded from headline inflation. So here given core inflation is of two types. There was a classification mentioned here. Core inflation is two types. One is core good inflation and core service inflation. Again, core good inflation is of two types. Core good inflation again split into two parts. Consumer durable inflation, consumer non-durable inflations. So trend in core inflations are important. Why this core inflation is important? This core inflation is important in determining the contour of monetary policy. Simple thing. So in order to set the monetary policy, core inflations are to be observed or core inflation are to be studied by the policy maker. So this is given here, I think 11.13 figure 11. Here we have seen this is the core inflation and policy repo rate. Obviously, when policy repo rate is lower, 3.1, this is policy core inflation. When policy repo rate is higher, core inflation is lower. When policy repo rate is lower, this one you can check June 22, 21, 22. What the relation between these two variables? As policy rate is declining, core inflation is rising. As policy rate is rising, core inflation is falling. So there is a vital correlations. This economic survey also determine the coefficient of correlation between these two variables. We will study later of these sessions. So this is how we can say more the policy rate, lower will be the core inflation. So by this figure, it is obvious that this core inflations, the relationship between the core inflations and policy repo rate, there is a vital correlation between these two variables. So in order to check and control the core inflations, monetary policy raised the policy repo rate. This is how we can understand from this economic survey how the core inflation rate is important in determining or in deciding the policy rate of the RBI. Now these core services, very interestingly here mentioned, these core service prices are high and are risk factor for the inflation outlook of advanced economics. So very important point here mentioned, these core services prices are risk factor for the inflation outlook in advanced economy. But whereas Indian core service inflation reached a 9-year low, India core service low in a 9-year. Indian core service inflation reached a 9-year low in financial year 2024. How it become possible? This was aided by moderation in housing retail inflation with a significant increase in the stock of housing, new houses in financial year 2023. So this is vital point that mentioned in our economic services. In respect of global, these core service prices are at a risk factor in inflation outlook in respect of global scenario. Whereas in Indian scenario, it was this core service was reached a 9-year low in 2024. How it become possible? Here mentioned this was basically aided by the moderation in housing retail inflation. So housing retail inflations remain very moderated. As because the stock of house rises, new houses were built. So this is one most important reasons that we need to be understand here. Now in case of non-consumer durables, the consumers non-durable, C&D, consumers non-durable, what mentioned in consumer price index basket have three components. Three components were mentioned. That means I mean to say consumer non-durable, which was mentioned in consumer price index basket, have three components. First component, food and beverage. Second component is fuel, and third, other consumption items. It is obvious the food inflation has been global phenomenon. Food inflation is a global phenomenon. And here mentioned major regions behind these food inflations were mentioned in this economic service. In this economic survey where heat waves, one is heat waves, uneven monsoon distributions, unseasonal rainfall, hailstorm, dry condition, etc. All are the major reasons behind hiking in food inflations. And next, one important thing we need to understand here, these global food prices, reason for price pressure in major food, global food price and domestic food inflation. How Indian domestic food inflation is correlated with global food prices. Especially India depends on input of edible oil. basically India edible oil market heavily depend upon imports. Indian edible market, domestic edible market heavily depend upon imports, and more than 50% of the total edible oil, more than 50% of total edible oil requirement being imported. So this is very sensitive. That is why these imported edible prices in global market is very sensible to our domestic price hike, thereby making more sensible global edible prices to domestic inflation. Simply, when the prices of edible globally rise, this this occurrence of price hiking also affect our domestic prices. But it is said recently we have seen, it is also mentioned this economic survey, that recent downward trend in edible prices is broadly correlated with decline in domestic edible price. That is, in India, domestic edible price, due to the low domestic edible price is on the mood of downward trending. This is the fundamental relations. And here mentioned some administrative measures that Government of India took for countering this hyper food inflation, administrative measures to contain food inflations. We need to mention here one thing. Due to the supply disruption, what the inflation is occurring, that cannot be controlled only by applying monetary measures as well as fiscal policy. Because this price hike was happened because of the supply chain disruption. Due to the supply chain disruptions, no economics can control directly by managing aggregate demand of fiscal policy and monetary policy. So we need to apply here administrative measure. That is why various administrative measures were taken by Government of India to counter these inflations. Like export of wheat flour, maida, semolina was placed under prohibit category in August 2022. So all such type of items cannot be exported from India. This is one administrative measure was taken. To prevent hoarding, this is one another administrative measures was taken. The government introduced Bharat, which is 27 point per kg. All are about the administrative measures. So from our exam point of view, we need to understand, due to the supply chain disruptions, what the inflations occur cannot be controlled directly by applying monetary measures or fiscal measures discussed critically. Such type of questions are supposed to be asked in our exam. Okay, thank you.